1995 is one of the most underrated years in the history of heavy metal. So many big hits, so many big comebacks, and so many groundbreaking albums. Find out all about it next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to another episode of The Metal Dude Abides. Tonight, we are going to take a look at the year 1995 and look at the best heavy metal songs and heavy metal albums that came out that year. But before we get into all that, I want to send out a personal get well to Pete Pardo over at Sea of Tranquility. I've never met Pete. I don't know Pete, but I have been inspired by Pete. He is the reason I'm doing this channel. I found Pete in Sea of Tranquility, so many years ago. I just thought it was so cool how he could talk about music, the music that I loved. I could kind of tell we were about the same age. And let me just say that if this channel ever is a tenth as good as the quality of Pete's productions, if I ever know a tenth of the music Pete knows, I'll be really doing something. So Pete was recently diagnosed with brain cancer. We're wishing him the best of luck. We know you're going to make it, Pete. We know you're going to beat this thing. There is a Patreon that's been set up. I don't know about legalities or whatever, but if I can, I'll link it in the comments below, in the description below. But anyway, get well, Pete. We need Sea of Tranquility in our lives. I can't get enough of all the great content you're doing, so keep up the good work. Now, with all that being said, 1995 is one heck of a year. We're going to do it a little bit differently than we have been doing it, because this whole channel is dedicated to fixing the mess the Grammys make. So, a couple of things. Number one, the Grammys have this thing called Best Heavy Metal Performance. What the hell is a performance? Are we talking about live? Are we talking about this? Are we talking about that? And they put in singles, they put in albums, they put in live tracks, they do all sorts of things. None of that for us. We're gonna stick to a much better format. We're gonna talk about the best 5 heavy metal albums of the year. We're gonna talk about the best 5 heavy metal songs in the year, the way the Grammys should do it. But we will talk about who the Grammys nominated that year in this vague heavy metal performance category. We'll review those as well. In fact, let's start there. What were the Grammys thinking were the best heavy metal performances of 1995? If you've been watching this channel, you know that I rarely, if ever, agree with the Grammy selections, and this year is no exception to that. The 5 nominees the Grammys put together: 9 Inch Nails, Happiness in Slavery. This is actually the artist that wins Best Heavy Metal Performance for 1995. Let me just say this right off the bat. 9 Inch Nails is not heavy metal. Why? Full stop. There's no more discussion. There's no more debate. If you want to put 9 Inch Nails into the hard rock category or the rock category, knock yourselves out. 9 Inch Nails, an excellent band, but they're not heavy metal and do not belong in this. Anybody watching this channel who thinks 9 Inch Nails is heavy metal, please put your arguments in the description below, in the comments below, because I don't see it. Their second nominee, Gwar, with the song SFW. I want to say this delicately. I don't think Gwar would be in my top 20 songs or my top 20 albums of the year, let alone in the top 5. I think this is the Grammys trying to be edgy. SFW kind of has an edgy twist to it. I'm not a big fan of Gwar. Again, I don't like to try to put down other heavy metal bands. I don't want to yuck on anybody's yums. If you like Gwar, give me some ideas of the songs and albums you think are really great. Never been a big Gwar fan. Very surprised to see them nominated for a Grammy. The third nominee is a band I love, Megadeth. But they're being nominated for a cover song of the old Black Sabbath song Paranoid. I don't believe in any way, shape, or form we should be nominating covers unless they're redefining that song in a way that makes it their own. And this does not even come close to the bill. This is Megadeth doing Black Sabbath Paranoid. And one more thing, the Grammys didn't nominate Paranoid when it came out. So, again, nominating Megadeth. This is like the 6th year in a row, by the way. So the Grammys have a thing for Megadeth, which is good. Megadeth, one of the greatest bands of all time. But the last 2 years, Megadeth has put out like singles that weren't even full albums, and now a cover. That will not make my top 5, I guarantee it. The next nominee, White Zombie, for their song More Human Than Human. Hey, I got to give the Grammys credit here. They actually picked an artist that's relevant in 1995, doing an original song in 1995 that actually jams pretty good. And finally, Metallica for the song For Whom the Bell Tolls. This is like a live version of that. Once again, similar, but not quite the same as Megadeth and Paranoid. For Whom the Bell Tolls is one of the best heavy metal songs in the history of heavy metal. You could make an argument it belongs in like the top 20 all time. Great song. But once again, the Grammys didn't nominate this song when it came out 22 years ago. And so I don't like to reward legacy artists for putting out live versions of their songs from 20 years ago and saying this is the best music of today. It's kind of insulting to the bands of today, and it really goes back to, it's a makeup call. As you can see, I'm wearing my Philadelphia Flyers shirt. We're right in the thick of the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. Go Flyers, go Avs. Yes, I have 2 teams. It's a long story. But in hockey, if a referee makes a bad call, even if it benefits your team, you have to hold on, because in the next 4 or 5 minutes of game time, they're going to make a makeup call. They're going to find any reason to penalize the other teams. Just got through watching a game the other day, got an early penalty against Carolina. I knew it was a bad call right off the bat. I was like, guaranteed the referees are going to find some reason in the next 5 minutes to penalize my team. And they did. And Carolina scored on the power play. I'm not bitter, but you didn't come here to talk about hockey. So I digress. So anyway, the Grammys are notorious for missing major acts, not just in metal, but across rock and roll altogether. And then come along a few years later, realize they missed it, and then try to make up for what they missed. And I just don't abide by that. If you want to give Metallica like a Lifetime Achievement Award, knock yourselves out. If they put out good music in 1995 that's original and new, give them a nominee. But don't be sitting there giving them a nomination for a song that's 22 years old, even though it did come out in a live album. So of the 5 choices here, I have to go with White Zombie, More Human Than Human. Again, the Grammys went with probably one of the weakest choices with 9 Inch Nails, but it should have been White Zombie. But do any of these really stack up? Let's go through what I think the top 5 albums and songs of the year are. Let's go right to albums. Our first nominee, At the Gates, with their amazing album Slaughter of the Soul. This is kind of the beginning of what's referred to as the Gothenburg-style melodic death metal era. Now, there are 3 major bands that kind of are attributed to this movement. At the Gates, and this album in particular. But also, bands still really making great music today, In Flames and Dark Tranquillity. Spoiler alert, we might be talking about them here in a second. They all came out right about the same time. They were all putting out excellent music and really solidified this movement. Now, unfortunately for us, At the Gates is about to be no more. We hardly knew ye. Just about the time that they really get their act together and really get this movement going, the pressures of following up this album get to be too much, and the band disbands. But make no mistake, this is an excellent album. It's a pioneering album. At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul. It's kind of strange. When you talk about pioneering albums, sometimes a band gets a lot of accolades and praise, and sometimes they kind of get the shaft. And I think that's the case with our second nominee, Dark Tranquillity, with their album, The Gallery. We are talking about the beginning of the Gothenburg-style melodic death metal. And when you talk about that movement, two albums always kind of get mentioned. Slaughter of the Soul, which we just mentioned, and The Jester Race, which is going to come out next year by In Flames. You know the one album that kind of gets panned out of this whole bunch? This one here, Dark Tranquillity, is one of the, still to this day, making fantastic death metal music. But this album, I don't think gets quite the credit it is due. Now, this is the beginning of the Michael Stanley era, where he takes on the lead vocals. He is still the lead singer for Dark Tranquillity to this day, one of my favorite singers of all time. Lots of good stuff on here. One song I'll just bring you into attention to, Silence and the Firmament with Drew. I love the guitar work on this. Some of the best early, that melodic guitar sound that I love so much, really prominent on that song. Anyway, our second nominee, Dark Tranquillity, The Gallery. Talk about groundbreaking albums. Our third nominee, Death, with their album, Symbolic. This is the sixth studio album from Death, and I just think this is their absolute masterpiece. They go back all the way to the absolutely fantastic opening album that they had, their debut album, Scream Bloody Gore. And it seems like with each album, they just get a little bit better, just culminating right here with Symbolic. I think Chuck and the boys have their first three albums, really kind of that poorly produced death metal. They start getting a little bit more sophisticated in their production techniques. They start to also explore more progressive, sophisticated music. And again, it just builds and builds to this point. This is the highlight. This is their masterpiece. If you've never listened to Death before, I suggest you go right here. It is fantastic. The opening track, the title track, has one of the most monstrous, memorable riffs you're ever going to hear. Love that song. The first 5 songs on this album, terrific. I love Crystal Mountain. There's just so many songs to talk about. Our third nominee, Death, Symbolic. Our fourth nominee is also a groundbreaking album, but now we're talking about nu metal. Deftones, with their debut album, Adrenaline. Now, if you have been following the channel, if you've heard my rants, you'll know that I'm not really a nu metal fan. But there's a few bands that they have some nu metal aspects to them, but they've risen into something much more. I believe I've never really considered Deftones a nu metal band, but I have to admit that if there was an album in their catalog that is classified as nu metal, it's right here, their very first one, Adrenaline. But you can see a lot of different influences, a lot of varied sounds and textures that come into their music. So again, I'm not a nu metal fan. If you've avoided these guys because you're like, I don't like nu metal, give them a try. Like I said, it's like nu metal, but better. The first song on here, song by the name of Bored. What a way to introduce yourself to the musical world. Absolute banger. Our fourth nominee, Deftones, Adrenaline. Our fifth and final album could also be considered a groundbreaking album, Sabotage, Dead Winter Dead. How is this a groundbreaking album? Well, this is the point in time where Sabotage starts to become their alter ego and starts transmorphing into Trans-Siberian Orchestra. This is where they put out several songs, but the one in particular, Christmas Eve Sarajevo, which then becomes a staple in the Trans-Siberian Orchestra catalog. It's so amazing when you look at Sabotage in their early years to now being a band that I jokingly say saves Christmas. Because in this household, people, by the time Christmas is over, they're like, no more Trans-Siberian Orchestra. You've played that and played that and played that. I think it's the absolute best Christmas music around. Uh, my family is probably like just waiting for New Year's Eve to happen. But this is the era of Sabotage that is so interesting. Not everything they do is fantastic, but a lot of it is so well put together. Paul O'Neill is such a brilliant songwriter, and he really, you can see his influence with Sabotage, working with the guys. They just put out this entire album. I focused on the one Christmas song, but this whole album is just epic feel, great production. I love Doesn't Matter Anyway. I Am, Starlight. Starts off soft. I'm like, I don't know. And by the end of it, it's just absolutely blistering. The title track is good. If you've never listened to Later Day Sabotage, check out Dead Winter Dead and be enlightened to the beginning of Trans-Siberian Orchestra right here. So once again, our 5 nominees for Best Heavy Metal Album of the Year: At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul; Dark Tranquillity, The Gallery; Death with Symbolic; Deftones with Adrenaline; and Sabotage with Dead Winter Dead. And the winner is Death, Symbolic. This has been a long time coming. Death has been putting out so many good albums year by year, and every year when I, compile the best albums of the year, it's right there on the cusp. A couple of albums might beat it out here and there, but this year it could not be stopped. Like I said, it just all comes together on this album. Every track on here is absolutely amazing. Big, huge monster riffs, great production, so different from when they earlier started. And it really leads a very somber question of what was Death going to be. We know what they were, one of the great death man pioneer bands of all time. But you can really tell that Chuck was really starting to find his voice, his way, and Death was really becoming something bigger and bigger. I think we were just at the tip of the iceberg right here. Unfortunately, we lost Chuck, shortly after this. He was starting to kind of experiment a little bit, had kind of a side band starting, was kind of trying to get into maybe some different vocals, which I think were going to be really good. So this is such a good album. This is, by all accounts, maybe the masterpiece of the Death Collection. I know they're beloved by so many people, and everybody's got their favorites, but I think this is it. This is their masterpiece. Long overdue to get these guys an Album of the Year award. All right, let's see who gets Song of the Year. All right, a couple of the bands are going to be double dipping here. Our first nominee, At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul. We talked about one of the big pioneering albums in the melodeath realm. The title track, absolutely the best song on it. The same with our second nominee, Death. Again, a very transformative album, the best in the Death catalog. Their title track, Symbolic, I talked about it. Ooh, that riff. I can't get it out of my head. My favorite Death song of all time right here, Symbolic. Our third nominee, the band Down, with their song, Stone the Crow. Now, if you lost track of Phil Anselmo back in the day, we talked about just last year, as a matter of fact, there was some warning signs that maybe things weren't as rosy as could be with Pantera. Well, this was Phil Anselmo's side band, Down. This song here, Stone the Crow, just bluesy, sludgy, doomy. If you're a big fan of Pantera, you'll probably love this, even though the styling is very different. Phil Anselmo's voice, terrific here. But again, this is one of those, back in the 90s, you just didn't have side bands like you do today. This was a real warning sign that maybe things with the Pantera camp were starting to unravel a bit. Our fourth nominee, Iced Earth, with their epic song, Dante's Inferno. Far be it from me to recommend a song that's over 16 minutes long. You know me, I don't really like songs that long normally, but this song uses every bit of that 16 minutes to put together one of the great epics in heavy metal history right here. Our fifth nominee, Ozzy Osbourne, Perry Mason. For those of you keeping score at home, Ozzy had retired a couple of years ago, but after a couple of weeks around the house with Sharon, decided, enough of that. I'm going back on the road. Calls up Zakk Wylde and says, let's get the boys back together. The whole Ozzy album, Osmosis, a really good comeback. Probably the last really great Ozzy album that came out. And I can't get over this song, Perry Mason. I have always loved it. It's an odd song. If you're not as old as me, you probably like, Perry Mason, what's all of that about? He was an attorney on the old black and white TV show, played by Raymond Burr, of all things. Again, probably Ozzy's home. He's retiring. He's watching old syndicated shows and went, Perry Mason, yeah, that'd be a great song. Who knows what the inspiration for this was, but it is an absolute banger. So once again, our 5 nominees. At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul. Death, Symbolic. Down, Stone the Crow. Iced Earth, Dante's Inferno. And Ozzy Osbourne with Perry Mason. And the winner is... It probably shouldn't be. Again, we're talking about some of the most groundbreaking songs of all time. But I got to give the award to Ozzy. Ozzy Osbourne, Perry Mason. This is one of those songs that I just have adored from the minute I heard it. I still listen to it to this day. Again, we're talking 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It still holds up today. The riff that Zakk Wylde comes up with on this song, one of the all-timers. Love it to death. Again, don't have a clue as to what Ozzy could have possibly been inspired by to do this, but my bias is showing. Love me some Ozzy, love me some Zakk Wylde, love me some Perry Mason. So congratulations to Ozzy Osbourne for Song of the Year, Perry Mason, and congratulations again to Death for their sensational album, Symbolic. Now, we talked about the Grammys and their heavy metal nominees. Let's see what they did in the hard rock categories and other big categories that year. Let's start on something we agree with. Best Female Performer, Alanis Morissette. She put out a pretty good album that year, Jagged Little Pill. I know there's kind of some of the songs on the album could be a little cringy, but I love me some Alanis Morissette. I thought this was really fresh sounding back in the day. A lot of pent-up anger released on an album is always a good thing. Very metal of her. But yeah, Best Female Artist, Alanis Morissette. This is the first time in a while that they haven't drug out some really old female performer that was way past their prime. So seeing a younger artist get this, I'm going to agree with this one. And speaking of older performers, Best Male Performer goes to Tom Petty. Now, I'm not going to say too much about Tom Petty. I love Tom Petty. We were listening to him all the way back into the 70s. At this point, I would think they could move on to something a little bit fresher, something a little newer. But Tom Petty will do. Pretty good artist. Good to see him getting some recognition for all of his great work. And when you talk about older musicians, some of the other nominees were even older than Tom Petty. Neil Young is still getting nominated in 1995 for some odd reason. And I find this interesting. Bob Dylan gets nominated for Knock, Knock, Knocking on Heaven's Door. Now, Bob, this is an old song. This is an old artist. They actually nominated Guns N' Roses for doing a cover of this song not too long ago. The Grammys love themselves some Knock, Knock, Knockin'. But let me just say this. You know, we talked about if an artist comes out and maybe makes a new version of a song or whatever, great. But let me just say this. Bob Dylan never could really hold a note. He's never been, in my humble opinion, a great singer. By 1995, This guy could mumble at best. Really, really, in his older days, could not sing at all. I mean, he couldn't enunciate. So how in the world Bob Dylan gets a nomination for Knocking on Heaven's Door, I'll never know, but there it is. So I guess of the selections, I guess Tom Petty worked pretty good. Best rock group, Blues Traveler. They're a pretty good band. Again, I could have thought of a lot of different bands. A lot of bands we just talked about that could have gotten nominated. But, nothing too bad there. Album of the year, again, Jagged Little Pill. Sure. Again, it was a little bit of a big hit back in the day, and I think it's held up fairly decently. The song that year was from the artist Seal, Kiss from a Rose. Big hit for him. Now, this is when it gets a little interesting, though. The new artist of the year goes to Hootie and the Blowfish. Now, I love me some Hootie. Big Dolphins fan. I'm a big Dolphins fan. The Dolphins make us both cry. But let me get this straight. Alanis Morissette's the best female artist of the year. She put out the album of the year, Jagged Little Pill. But you're going to put Hootie and the Blowfish over Alanis for best newcomer. The logic just doesn't add up on that one, folks. And oh, by the way, when we talk about new artists, we're talking about all these groundbreaking artists. We have some good ones this year. We have Opeth. Opeth came very close to getting in on Best Album of the Year. They are tremendous. We talk about, they know about Phil Anselmo because he's in one of the biggest bands on the planet in Pantera. How about a little love for Down? We talk about one of the biggest bands of the 90s being Deftones. There's a lot of really good bands, metal bands out there. And we're going to stick around with Hootie and the Blowfish, huh? Like I said, they're Dolphin fans, so I love them, but they've had one good song their whole career, in my opinion. Rock instrumental, this is another interesting one. We talked about this a little bit with Metallica, but this was even more absurd. They gave the Instrumental of the Year award to the Allman Brothers for the song Jessica. Now, if you think it's ridiculous that they gave a nomination to Metallica for a song that was over 20 years old, Jessica came out in 1973. Now, I'll admit I'm being lazy and I didn't look it up, but I guarantee you they weren't giving the Allman Brothers Grammy Awards when this came out. The Allman Brothers, this is just an interesting little thing here. The Allman Brothers put out a double live album in the early 70s. That was so groundbreaking, it was so amazing, that it's the reason we had double live albums being produced by bands for the next 20 years. And their Grammys kind of missed it. So now, here we are, not to be morbid, we don't even have both of the Allman Brothers left. One of them has been dead for quite some time, and you're giving them the Best Instrumental of the Year award for a song they put together in 1973. Okay. Seems like, again, if you wanted to give the Allman Brothers a Lifetime Achievement Award, that would be really good. But the 1995, it's a little bit dated, Grammys, a little bit dated. Once again, let me just say, Sabotage put together a song that through the Trans-Siberian Orchestra would be being played by millions of households for Christmas for the next 20 years. Maybe that could have got at least a nomination. Some of the beautiful things that Opeth put out this year should have at least got a nomination. But hey, let's give it to the Allman Brothers for a song they wrote 22 years ago. Now, in the hard rock category, it's kind of a kissing cousin to the heavy metal. They kind of did the predictable thing. They gave the award to Pearl Jam for Spin the Black Circle. Again, we've talked about it. I'm over grunge by this point. And I've been over Pearl Jam for a hot minute as well. I did laugh. One of the nominees, Primus for Winona's Big Brown Beaver. I got a chuckle out of that. Primus was always good for a few laughs. I loved the song. My Name is Mud. Really good band here. Some kind of funny and really a talented musician. Claypool and the boys really could put together some things. This is probably well-known trivia, but went to school with Kirk Hammett. I think there was a time when Claypool and Metallica, after Cliff's passing, kind of looked at each other and went, would this work? I don't think it would have, but really great bass player. Love me some Primus. Van Halen, on their very last Van Hagar album, they get nominated for the Seventh Seal. Decent for Van Halen. I thought it was a good song. Alice in Chains, again, I'm kind of over them at this point with Grind. And then again, I'm not sure why. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. That was a song that came out in 1991. They probably have it on a soundtrack or something. Maybe a Greatest Hits album came out. I don't know. But really, we're going to just keep nominating old songs that you didn't nominate when it came out. Oh, by the way, I'll just give you a couple of better choices for this. To me, the standout song for hard rock in 1995 had to be my boy Smashing Pumpkins, Bullet with Butterfly Wings. Hands down, that should have been the winner. But The World I Know, Collective Soul put out an unbelievably, maybe their best album of their entire career right here as well. Doesn't even get a sniff, but that's really good stuff. The Grammys, slipping on that banana peel, don't know a thing about music. It's amazing that an award show that's meant to talk about the best music in the world has no idea what the best music in the world is. But that's our program. We are here every Tuesday doing these shows, and the best way, if you like this content, is go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, give it a thumbs up, help the old YouTube algorithm, and, like I say, every Tuesday it'd be great to have you on board. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. Take care.